Hey bosses! I wanted to make this video this lovely Friday evening, as you all are probably getting home from work and picking up kids and all that, because I've been thinking a lot today about a post that I did, a blog post that I did, which you can find on leahpinelli.com. I just posted it this morning, and the post is called How to Get Results. And in the post, I talk about kind of a different way of thinking about how you get the results that you're after in your life. And if you've been paying any attention at all to the work that I do, I talk a lot about how your thoughts create your feelings, which create your actions, which create your results. And it's probably no surprise that I'm getting right back to that when I talk about in my blog post about how to get results. So essentially, the idea is that your thinking always creates your results. And there's those intermediary steps of thinking creates the feeling, creates the action, creates the result. But a lot of times I have clients and friends really who ask me, well, here's the problem is I get that my thinking is creating the result and the result is one that I don't want. So what do I need to do in order to get the result that I do want? Like the problem is my thinking. So what do I do about my thinking? And in the article that I posted this morning, I talk a lot about how, that it seems like ostensibly then all you would have to do is change your thought, right? Okay, perfect. Like, let me just change my thought. But here's the issue is that I'm not talking about like manifestation. I'm not talking about like if you just keep repeating over and over the same mantra, it will become true, right? Like, I want a red Lamborghini in my driveway. I want a red Lamborghini in my driveway. And then all of a sudden, poof, red Lamborghini. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about changing your thinking, but in order to actually change the results, you have to not only change what you're thinking, but you have to change the belief. And a belief is simply a thought that you think over and over and over again. And oftentimes that belief will then become subconscious or ingrained. And that can go both positive and negative. So for example, if you have a thought like, I have always been an overeater, I'll be an overeater for the rest of my life. I can't get a hold of it. I've tried every diet, nothing works. I always end up binging. I'll always be an overeater. Well, that will create a feeling, which is probably not positive. Sounds like you don't feel like you have a lot of control, which will create an action, which is probably overeating, which then creates a result, which is then being overweight or carrying extra weight on your body as a result of feeling like you have a compulsion to eat. So if you flip that thought to something maybe more like, I know my body has the capacity to not overeat, or I know I have I know that I have the ability to not overeat. I'm learning how to not overeat. If you start to change those sentences, you'll find that you have a different feeling, such as, hey Amber. You'll find that you have a different feeling, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to say your name right, Lamise. But you'll have a different feeling, right? So if you change that thought to I'm learning to not overeat, that creates a different feeling in your body than I will always be an overeater. I'm always out of control with food. But here's the thing. If you don't really believe that you're learning to not be an overeater, it's not going to work and it's not going to stick. So the trick to believing it first is to recognize that you're having that limiting belief to begin with. So the first step is to really recognize that you're having this thought of, I'm always going to be overweight for the rest of my life. And the next step then is to start to really look at that and to really pay attention to that thought. So you can, as I'm always suggesting, hey Deuce, as I'm always suggesting, journal it, write it down, take a good hard look at it, right? And when you really start to recognize, okay, that's that limiting belief that keeps popping up, that keeps making me feel like shit. When you start to recognize that, then you can start to take action differently. So you can decide to maybe swap that belief out from, it's still working good because I just got a call and interrupted. You can swap that belief out to, I'm learning how to not be an overeater. Well, what's the feeling then that inspires in you? If you're learning how to not be an overeater, you might feel a sense of ambition, possibly a sense of motivation. And then the action from there might be to actually take action into learning how to not be an overeater. And I promise you, you can do it, right? There are concrete steps out there that you can learn. I'm happy to teach you, or any other teacher that you find. to end the overeating, to stop the overeating. So then that action then, because then you're taking that action to learn to stop overeating, the result is you're no longer an overeater. The result is you're learning to be not be an overeater. You're on the way to not being an overeater. So step one is to recognize the limiting beliefs that you have to begin with. And then step two is to really think through, what are the thoughts that I can use to replace that limiting belief that still feel accessible to me, right? They're not like this huge leap. It's not the red Lamborghini in your driveway. But what are the thoughts that I can swap out, right? That I can start to practice. And yeah, that might be repetition, that might be mantra, that might be journaling. But what are the thoughts that I can practice, replacing that thought that will actually inspire positive action, that will inspire, as my friend Jess Miller likes to say, inspired action or massive action, as opposed to that feeling of like, well, it's useless, there's no point anyway. So really start to pay attention to your thinking, noticing those negative thoughts that are not actually serving you, and getting those out, really considering, what is the thought that I want to have? Because remember, you get to choose your thoughts. So what are the thoughts that I want to have? And then start practicing those. And if it feels like a huge leap, go a little bit smaller. I'm learning to stop being an overeater versus I'm not an overeater, or, you know, whatever it is, I don't care about food, something so extreme that it doesn't make sense for you in your life. And then really practice taking action. Hola, Blanquita. Really practice taking action on that inspired action, that positive action, as opposed to the negative action that often just creates self-loathing. All right, so let me know what you think. If you want more details, of course, go to leahpinelli.com and check out my blog post that I just posted there today. If you are on my newsletter, you'll be getting it in your inbox tomorrow. Okay, I got a question here. How does this look like in moments or periods of stress? Yes. From work, during which these practices are so hard to keep up with. Oh my God. I cannot agree with you more, and you are absolutely right. So here's the deal. This is what I'm going to recommend to you and to everybody who has that question, because that is such a common question. So, and you're going to get really tired of me saying this, but I'm going to keep saying it because it is honestly the number one, very first step. First is you just notice. And here's what you're going to notice about noticing. So usually if you're an overeater, and especially if you're a stress eater, i.e. if you're a human being, although sometimes stress eaters don't eat it, or they are the opposite. When people are stressed, they don't eat at all. Never understood those folks. But if you're somebody who is an emotional eater, which is basically my entire clientele, if you're an emotional overeater, you know that in times of heightened emotion, such as stress or being tired or being bored even, or being overwhelmed, and even being excited and happy, you will notice that you maybe don't realize that you've overeaten until the deed is done. Like the bag of chips is empty, or the bag of cookies is already half gone. And all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, there it was, right? Like I just did it. And then if you're anything like me, then starts that cycle of self-loathing, where it's like, then you start to beat yourself up a little bit or even a lot. And maybe you beat yourself up for days, but you start to beat yourself up over the fact that, why did I do that again? And I should have gone for a run. I know better. Why am I doing this, right? So here's the thing. That's good news, because you recognized that you did it. Even though you recognized it, the self-loathing is not good news. But the fact that you recognized it at some point is good news, because that's the noticing part. That's the watcher part of your brain. So then the next thing you want to do is, I always recommend that you spend some time reflecting on that. So go write it down, write about what was happening for you at the time. And maybe what was happening was like you were straight up in kind of a blackout. Like you weren't even consciously thinking at the time. That's okay. Write that down. Be really specific about it. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? And then what will happen is you keep doing that. Every time you overeat, you keep doing that. You keep going back and reflecting on it, going back and reflecting on it. And then I guarantee you what's going to happen is you will start to notice sooner. So what will happen is maybe instead of noticing after the fact that you just overate, you'll notice while you're overeating. You're like, oh man, I am really full, but I'm going to keep going. And oh man, I'm doing it right now, but I don't really feel like I can stop. Or I'm doing it right now, I'm going to stop. Either way, you recognize in the moment, oh, I'm overeating right now. Go write about that. Go write it down. Look at your thoughts. Be really honest and clear with yourself. Then keep practicing that, and then you will eventually notice that eventually you really will start to notice ahead of time. Oh, I'm feeling the urge to overeat right now. I'm feeling an urge to be really full. I'm feeling an urge to go eat half a pack of Oreos and a bag of Doritos. Whatever it is, right? You'll start to notice it ahead of time. And you might still do it. You might still be like, okay, I'm on my way home from work. I'm really stressed. I've got so much going on. All I want to do is go home and eat a tub of ice cream. And so you do. Or all I want to do is go home and drink a bottle of wine. And so you do, right? You might allow yourself to give into that urge, but either way, you have now just progressed from noticing it after the fact, noticing it during, and then noticing it ahead of time. And then once you get to that point, which is kind of the third level, there's a fourth level. And that fourth level is when you're actually able to anticipate that you are going to have an urge to overeat. And that, once you start to get to that place where you recognize that you're gonna have that urge, and maybe you don't know when, but you know, I know me, I'm gonna have that urge, or I know that shit is crazy at work this week and I'm probably gonna have an urge to drink a lot or eat a lot or whatever it is, then you can actually start to plan for those urges. And when I say plan, I don't mean plan to binge. I mean actually plan for how you want to manage that emotion. How do you want to respond to the urge versus feeling like the urge has control over you? So I have another post on my website, leahpinelli.org, called, I think it's called Mind Ninja, or it's the post that has to do with urges versus, or resistance versus willpower, maybe I've called it. I got to go back and check. I don't remember. I wrote it quite a while ago. But it's this concept about what do you then do with an urge that you don't want, right? Like, I don't want to have an urge to binge eat Oreos, or I don't want to have an urge to drink, a 6-pack of beer tonight, but I recognize I'm having it. What do you do then? So I do have a post on that, and I can definitely speak more about urges on my next live if you've got questions about that. So Deuce, let me know if that answered your question or not. And thanks for posting the question. All right, I'm going to run out and get my kiddo right now. He is playing with all of his little amiguitos at his school. But I just wanted to share that with you guys, and feel free to comment down below. Let me know if you have questions. I would love to answer them. Talk soon. Ciao, ciao.